Alright everybody, MinMax Munchkin back with another video. First and foremost, as I usually do, Patreon shoutouts. Mike, Matthew, Ewing, Larry, Hocken, BardlyManHardlyTrying, Rogor, SuburbanHell, Frank Fan, Jared Henderson, Kaleron, Albert Kwak, Aidan Harth, Darth Xín, Gary Course, Matthew Collins, Brad Oldham, C Alcazar, Zachary Bradley, Rich Million, Jeremy Helton, Bredwin, Boy Fox, Bryan Moten, Sean, Cory Williams, Chris Pell, Mannozzi Stefano, Adekoya, Zeb McCubbin, Nathan Jane, Spiffey, PrimalBassBoost, Kyle, Shykes, Trevor Green, Matthew, Barone, Gaston, Ramirez, Jordan, Smith-Basset, Tyler, Charles, Heliostorm, Lloyd, and Lord Gazda. Thank you for your continued support, all new and old patrons. You are giving me more and more reasons to continue making videos more and more often, more frequently. For everybody else who is watching this video and whose name is not present on this list, there's always an option to chuck a buck my way. The link is gonna be somewhere in the description down below the video, or somewhere in the upper right corner of the channel, whatever method you prefer to get to this page. Yeah, there are options for you, so please check them out. I regularly update this page with new materials that I upload in my videos on this channel. So while none of this stuff is mandatory, I release everything for free pretty much. If you want a little bit more added convenience and for future reference getting these files, downloading them, you can do it that way if you choose to do so. Yeah, with that said, let's jump into the meat of the video. Ranger Spells Part 2. I already spoken about Ranger's features and spells before, so this is like a third video of the Ranger series. I'm gonna quickly repeat some of the stuff that I talked about before. So higher level Rangers do suffer from the fact that they lack a little bit of a punch, both in terms of the features and spells at their disposal, particularly when we compare them to Paladins, who are the only other half-caster class in the game. Paladins, as we all know, are one of the most powerful classes in the game, if not the most powerful class overall. That's a point that can be debated, but definitely Rangers compared to Paladins leave a couple things to desire for. However, with all of that said, they do get a couple of higher level options, particularly when it comes to spells. So in this video I'm going to be reviewing those spells that you might be interested in, obviously. As you can see, the list of the spells they get at higher levels is not very extensive. There's only like 20 something options here. So there are a couple of things here which are duds, kind of like trash, bad options, and a couple of them which are almost always pick this if you want your ranger to be much more useful in broad range of situations than not. So, yeah, first and foremost, right at the top of this list, level 3 spell, Conjure Animals. A few things can swing the flow of combat more than this spell can on its own. Especially, you know, especially when you think about fighting tougher monsters, but there's not a lot of them. Having a group of friendly creatures coming to your aid every time you cast this spell is just plain amazing. And even though you get it 4 levels after druids, so this is one of those druid and ranger specific spells, it's still an action economy equalizer that many DMs struggle with specifically. Important thing to always remember when using this spell is that it's actually up to DM's choice to let you know what specific beast came onto the battlefield. The only thing you have full control over is the challenge rating of the monsters that you cast with these spells. Typically, 8 beasts of challenge rating 1/4 or lower is the best option. Sometimes 4 of those, one half one. Definitely not 1 beast of challenge rating 2. Sometimes 2 beasts of challenge rating 1 might be a better choice if you're dealing with monsters that have AoE damage or other options that affect multiple friendlies. So having a fewer friendlies with more hit points and that can sustain some abuse might be a better option. So yeah, all in all, this spell definitely, it's a combat spell for sure. Can be used out of combat, especially if your DM lets you choose the type of beasts that appear. So for example, if you choose 8 beasts of challenge rating 1/4 or lower, you can get those giant owls or some other large creature that can carry you or your allies. So yeah, it's definitely useful in that regard, because it lasts an hour, so it's not it's definitely more geared towards combat, but it's not just a combat spell, you know. So there is a little bit of an overlap between those two things. Another spell that I would strongly recommend is Plant Growth. Even though you need to wait again a bit longer compared to bards and druids to get this spell, combining this with Spike Growth, which is a level 2 spell that you have access to as well, is one of the tried and tested methods of forcing your enemies to effectively spend 8 feet of movement, because by using this spell they have to spend 4, and then when you stack difficult terrain on top of this spell, yes, they do stack. This works wonderfully in the wilderness, not that well in urban or other areas, where DMs might tell you, well, there's not a single plant on the floor. So, but definitely consult with your DM before you learn this spell. If the DM tells you, if the DM is reasonable and tells you that the later portion of the campaign is gonna take place entirely in urban settings, dungeons, and places where there's not a lot of plants or any plants, yeah, this spell might definitely... I mean, the name of the spell is Plant Growth. If there's no plants, you can't do much with it. So always foster that good relationship with your DM, as it is with many cases with everything in the game. Now, for some reason, I still have this thing over there. That's definitely not what it should be. So definitely let's jump into this other spell, which is Non-Detection. This spell, it is situational. So it comes up in campaigns where the villain or somebody else is constantly spying on you or on the party using these divination magics. It's not necessary that you learn it, especially if you have bard or wizard that has this spell. But remember that you do have it on your list, and it definitely helps when bards and wizards don't have to bear the full load of countering divination magic using this spell. Even though they have more spell slots than you, sometimes just sharing the responsibilities and duties is gonna go a long way towards preserving the accumulative party resources and whatnot, you know. So sometimes you do need to help your fellow full casters in a party. Other two spells that I would definitely recommend, or at least consider learning, especially if you are playing in campaigns that are heavy on the pirate, water-based, or other liquid-based terrain, heavily themed around those. Both of these spells definitely have their uses. Now, water breathing is probably better because it lasts 24 hours compared to just 1 hour that water walk offers. But if you are dealing with terrains which are you know, acid, mud, snow, quicksand, even lava, you might actually need this spell more often. It depends on the campaign, so definitely remember that you have this on your list. That said, obviously you don't have to learn any of these spells, especially considering the fact going back to that old WoW of rangers that they can only learn 11 spells even at level 20. So yeah, you do have to consider the fact that you actually cannot learn all of these spells. You can only learn a couple of them. However, depending on what you're dealing with, what type of terrain, what type of setting, this is on your list, so don't forget about it. The spells that I would not recommend is Conjure Barrage, because the flavor of the spell is cool. The cone is too big to avoid hurting your allies in most cases. The damage is just, in my opinion, not worth the 3rd level slot. A fireball gets the job done better in most cases anyway, so let your wizards and sorcerers who get it at level 5 compared to you getting this spell at level 9 handle the AoE damage. Unless you're literally the only caster in the party, everybody else is playing barbarians, monks, and I don't know, fighters. In that case, I mean, sure, go with this spell because it might be useful. It's at least an option. However, for most rangers, I would recommend casting other spells to do damage. Spike growth, combining with plant growth or whatever. This is just mostly a waste of a 3rd level slot, at least in my opinion. Daylight is... I mean, look, it's... If there's nobody in the party that has Dispel magic and you're constantly dealing with magical darkness or creatures that are lurking in the shadows and abusing that fact, this is gonna be a dead weight spell. Now, I've never ever been in a situation where I've looked over the list of the spells that I have access to and seeing this spell and thinking, oh, I could have used this spell in that situation. In most cases, Dispel magic does the same. However, there is a sad fact of the matter that Dispel magic is not a ranger spell. It's just the fact that you have to deal with. It is annoying. I don't see the point why not, but it's just another thing that rangers don't get. So yeah, goes back to the fact that rangers are legitimately one of the weakest classes in the game. That said, 120 feet of light is nice. In most cases, even if it does provide you increased radius that you can see, a torch or a light cantrip is all you need. So if you have cleric, druid, sorcerer with that cantrip, or just a torch will be more than enough in most cases. So yeah, I don't see the reason of casting a 3rd level slot, one of the very few higher level slots that you have access to. And also the fact that learning this spell, obviously you have to sacrifice another spell that you might be able to learn instead of this one. So yeah, flame arrows. Look, the only benefit you gain from this spell compared to Hunter's Mark is that you don't have to spend the bonus action moving the mark from one target to another. Crossbow expert feat users might find this advantageous for streamlining the action economy. However, the fire damage is problematic. Many monsters are resistant and immune to fire damage. It's very easy to burn through 12 to 18 pieces of ammunition that this spell provides you. So the concentration of up an hour, if you're dealing with multiple combats in that hour, you're more than likely to run out of those pieces of ammunition anyway. And you're still better off casting Hunter's Mark with the 3rd level slot for the extended duration, because if you cast Hunter's Mark with the 3rd level slot, which is the same level that this spell is, it lasts for 8 hours compared to this spell only lasting 1 hour. And on top of that, this spell does cost an action to cast. So in the turn that you cast it, you know, you kind of like waste your attack action in that turn. It's definitely better in kind of like dungeon delving scenarios where you might be dealing with multiple combats in an hour, but in most cases this is just cast Hunter's Mark. Even with the lower level slot with the 1st or 2nd level, it's pretty much better than this spell, because, you know, whatever. This is a very low impact spell for the level that it is. We might be talking about this spell if it's a 2nd level spell. Okay, then it might actually have some use, but a 3rd level spell that only provides whatever. It's just ignore it. You definitely don't need it. Lightning Arrow goes back to the similar kind of argument that I use for Conjure Barrage. It is a AoE spell. It works slightly differently than Conjure. It's kind of like, it's got a decent amount of utility that you can do. You have to make a ranged weapon attack. You are gonna hit at least once in the next minute as you are concentrating on this spell. The damage is comparable to Conjure Barrage. A little bit more damage on the target that you hit, but less damage on everybody else. Conjure Barrage probably has larger effective AoE than Lightning Arrow. All in all, low damage radius that it's lower than Fireball. You having to need to be level 9 instead of level 5 that a full caster that has access to Fireball. Again, if you absolutely need AoE damage because nobody else is covering that part in the party and you're the only one who has to cover for that hole in your party's game, yeah, sure, but I mean, if you want to do damage in a large radius in a large area. Plant growth plus spike growth combo can provide much more devastation, so no need to bother with this spell. It's just, you know, yeah, sure, it's instant damage. I just don't see it as effective as casting some of these other spells. Plant growth, spike growth, even Hunter's Mark, you know, it's just like Hunter's Mark might actually end up dealing more damage than this spell. Sure, this is gonna quickly lower the hit points of a few creatures that you're dealing with, but in most cases, considering the fact that you can only the lowest level you can learn this spell is a level 9, and this little damage it provides, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it might be that I'm biased because I just think that level 3 spells should be, that deal damage should be things that you learn at level 5 instead of at level 9, but that's just me, hey. So there's that. Definitely, it is an option. It's at your disposal. You can definitely learn it. If you have other party members that deal AoE damage, just ignore these 2 spells. There are other things that you can do. Protection from energy, like, depends on knowing what you're dealing with, but Absorb Elements, which is a level 1 reaction spell, can do the same or even better job in most cases, because casting this spell requires knowing in advance what type of damage you're gonna be taking, and it's in most cases much less of an investment casting a first level slot, and obviously you have better spells to concentrate on other than this. So yeah, Speak with Plants suffers from similar issues as lower level spells such as Speak with Animals and Beast Bond. It's not a concentration, but it's, yeah, you have to waste the slot. It's a high level slot. Speaking with Plants, it's very, I don't know, it's just, it's so situational. It is thematic. It's cool that Rangers get all these toys similar to Druids, but yeah, I just don't know. So yeah, it's definitely, there are uses, but 9 out of 10 times, whatever. It's just better off that you cast something else. A Wind Wall. Now, okay, so it is kind of like a control spell. However, damage is very low. Control benefits are too specific. And all of this, it's very hard to justify learning this spell over others that are useful in a broader range of circumstances. So sure, if you're dealing with enemies that constantly shoot arrows and bolts your way, and you're dealing with fog, smoke, and other gases that is constantly harassing your party, sure, I mean, this spell is gonna definitely be useful in those situations, but speaking from experience, 9 out of 10 times, this is just gonna be a dead weight on your list. So, for a class that can only learn 11 spells, there are better options, again. So, that's it for level 3 spells. Let's go over level 4 spells. There's pretty much only 2 options. Conjure Woodland Beings is a bigger brother of Conjure Animals. And even though this is a much more powerful than Druids, who get access to it on much lower levels, the good old summon 8 pixies who polymorph everybody into T-Rexes combo is still possible, especially if your DM is more generous when it comes to specific creatures that get conjured. Some DMs do allow you to choose the fake creatures that you summon, so in that case you choose pixies, because why not, right? Pixies have polymorph, and at the point that you get access to learning this spell, everybody in your party is at least level 8, probably, right? Yeah, casting polymorph, everybody gets turned to T-Rexes, and it's just craziness all around. It's one of the most broken combos in the game, and yeah, some DMs even allow those. So it's something. It's a similar spell to Conjure Animals because the DM has the creature statistics. So you might as well end up with not pixies, but boggles or blink dogs or even sprites. But as you can see, there's only a couple of options on that list. So yeah, you might. There's like, if you have a DM, for example, who rolls randomly what type of creature you get, you have like 25% chance of getting pixies or something. So yeah, this spell might actually snowball the encounter that you're losing into something that you win by a large margin. Other spell that you definitely have to consider is Freedom of Movement. Even though it's a high level spell for you, which you get fairly late compared to bards, clerics, druids and all these other classes, it doesn't diminish the deceptively powerful benefits it provides. Being effectively immune to grapple and most effects that paralyze or restrain can turn a lot of higher CR monsters into a laughingstock, because you just effectively are immune to these things. You don't get affected. Be mindful of the fact that this spell does require all three components. So DMs who are anal about those things, I am actually one of them. This spell might not be useful at escaping from prisons after you're already being captured, but the duration of the spell does provide it is generous in a little bit in some way, if you know that something like that might happen in advance, and then you preemptively cast the spell on yourself before you get shackled, manacled, you know, you get bound by chains or whatever. This spell can easily circumvent even those situations. But for the most part, this spell excels in situations where you're dealing with powerful monsters or effects that paralyze, restrain, or grapple you. And at higher levels, that's a thing that happens more often than not. So yeah, this is legitimately one of the best level 4 spells that you have on your list. Gods know that you don't have many of them to choose from. So like, yeah, there's only 6 spells. Definitely learn this one. You don't actually have to learn Conjure Woodland Beings, because Conjure Animals you will manage with just this spell alone. So there's a little bit of an overlap in terms of those two spells, but definitely my recommendation is learn Freedom of Movement. You will not be sorry. In terms of level, other level 4 spells, pretty much the other 4 are... Okay, so Grasping Vine. Learning this at level 13 when dealing with lots of flying, burrowing, swimming and teleporting enemies who have spells and range attack options is hardly worth the spell. Hardly worth spending level 4 slot. Guardian of Nature, one of those spells better suited for lower level druids. Goes back to similar woes of higher level rangers, getting these types of spells very, very late into their progressions, and you have better spells to concentrate on anyway. Locate creature, you have locate object, so if you've seen the creature that you want to locate, you can use locate object to try to locate some of its clothes, weapons or whatever, tools. Something that's distinctive on that person, so why would you waste a level 4 slot that you can do the same type of thing with a level 2 slot, right? Stoneskin is at the level that you get it, which is level 13. Too high of a level, class and spell. Its diminishing returns that it provides, as more and more enemies have magical attacks, cast spells, deal non-physical damage, types of damage. So this spell being concentration and spending gold on top of that hardly makes it worth it ever casting this spell. It's pretty much one of those spells that I consider DM spells, right? So yeah, because the DMs have access to whatever, you know, they have unlimited resources, unlimited slots. It's pretty much that, yeah. So for most rangers, this is just a dead weight. At level 5, again, not very many options. I am gonna be somewhat I'm gonna contradictory to myself, because I did say that I wouldn't go for Conjure Barrage or Lightning Arrow for level 3 spells. However, I am gonna say that Steel Wind Strike and Conjure Volley, I mean, on your list, there's no other spell that can deal more damage than these two spells, right? In a quick way, right? So casting either of these spells is gonna provide a lot of damage to a lot of creatures, depending on what types of creatures you're dealing with. Steel Wind Strike is something that I would consider before Conjure Volley. Because being able to damage up to 5 creatures on your turn without hurting your allies is the main selling point of this spell. Low range, lack of higher level spell slots, and very late level that you get access to this spell are the drawbacks that you just have to deal with, because you have nothing better than this, right? So you gain access to this spell at level 17, right? Yeah, so it's a 5th level spell, level 17. There's nothing better on your list than this, so you just have to deal with it. And if you get to level 17 ranger, strongly recommend this spell. I've seen it in action, and even characters that are decently high level, like wizards, level 15 wizards and stuff like that, you still cast this spell because it's very good. Force damage is not often resisted. It's never resisted in like 99% cases. The force damage is gonna deal full damage, or depending on how much you roll. And then on top of that, obviously, you make 5 attack rolls depending on how many creatures you can actually get within 30 feet. So yeah, I mean, it's really good. A Conjure Volley, even though I'd probably again pick Stillwind Strike over this spell, its range and radius are nice alternatives. When it's a nice alternative when dealing with a horde of enemies from farther distances. That might be happening more often at higher levels. It does pale in comparison with, for example, Wizard casting Meteor Strike, but you have to make the best out of what you have. So this is definitely one of the combat spells that I would consider, right? So definitely have it in mind. Commune with Nature. Even though druids can prepare this spell at level 9, while rangers have to wait again all the way up until level 17 to learn it, it's still a somewhat sensible choice even at such a late stage of the character progression. At such high levels, chances are you're dealing with exotic types of creatures that this spell covers, and planar issues, planar problems, planar whatever types of problems you're dealing with. So while you might not care about 3 out of 5 facts that this spell kind of like just provides to you in a very generous distance, so you might not care about this or that, but I mean, these two things might actually be very useful. You can still gain a lot of info from it, regardless of the fact that these other 3 are kind of moot at such a high level. Not being able to cast it ritually, though, is just that perennial problem, the ever-present problem that rangers have to deal with that druids don't. Druids have access to all of these spells, but they can cast it ritually, meaning that they don't have to spend a slot. You yourself, you don't have the ritual casting, and that's just the unfortunate reality that you have to deal with. It's a pain, but sometimes you do have to waste a slot before you know what you're getting yourself into, right? And in terms of the spells that I would definitely not recommend, Swift Quiver. Now, I'm probably gonna catch some flack for this, but I consider this a bard spell, right? Plain and simple. A lot of archer builds revolve around this particular spell because it does give you 2 bonus action attacks, I'm not gonna lie, so you can combine it with sharpshooter and all of that stuff. But you get it at level 17, bards get it at level 10. And it's pretty much a spell. At level 10, when you get this spell, sure, it's good. But at level 17, be dealing like 20 more damage with sharpshooter, and then on top of that, like 1d8, 2d8, whatever. It's not something that's gonna do. Like, if you just compare Conjure Volley and Stillwind Strike to Swift Quiver. Let's just compare Stillwind Strike. Casting this spell once, instantaneously you make 5 attack rolls, each dealing 6d10 force damage. That's like 30d10 damage that you can potentially deal with just one casting of the spell. Swift Quiver concentration, you have to maintain concentration, you have to wait before all of these bonus action attacks actually hit. And then on top of that, those attacks not even dealing that much damage, you know, because even if you have sharpshooter, that's like 1d8 plus 15, whatever. So that's Stillwind Strike still outperforms that in terms of the damage. So yeah, in terms of rangers, I don't actually value this spell. It's just my own personal opinion. Ever since Xanatars became a thing, I just value Stillwind Strike over Swift Quiver, period. Tree Stride, useful for level 9 druid again, but it's gonna be useless for 9 out of 10 rangers when they finally gain the ability to learn it, because at level 17, again, you're dealing with world-shattering, interplanar events, so jumping from one tree to another is a fool's errand, even if the final fight does take place in the middle of the forest. It's just the nature of the beast. At such high of a level, being able to like teleport from one tree to another is it's almost irrelevant. Wrath of Nature, high CR, again, high CR, flying, burrowing, swimming, and teleporting monsters will definitely laugh at this spell. Similar issues with terrain dependency. You have to pretty much be in the terrain where you can actually benefit from this spell, because it affects trees, rocks, and grasses. So again, druids, sure, level 9 druids might as well be relevant. Level 17 rangers, you're most likely gods know where in some super ridiculous plane of fuck know what, you know. So you're most likely not in the forest. Let's just keep it on that. Decent on druids. Even for druids, I would probably not go for this spell before some other spells. And yeah, as you can see, the list is not extensive. There's only like 20 something options. These are the ones that I would consider at most times. Now I'm gonna say, after all of this, the reason why I said some of these spells not recommended is just because I'm talking a bit in most generic terms. You know, there are many variables, factors. You know, if for example, I did recommend that water breathing and water walk. If you're playing in a desert campaign that there's not a single like pond of water, that you have to rely on your cleric casting create or destroy water to even survive, then these two spells are definitely not going to be recommended in such a scenario. But if you're playing in a pirate campaign, water elemental plane, whatever, definitely these two spells are gonna be much better. The reason why I put them is because, you know, oftentimes you do deal with lakes, rivers, seas, oceans, and even elemental planes of water, and even like these like exotic types of terrain and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I do recommend at least considering these two. Going back to some of these spells that I didn't recommend, mostly going back to Conjure, Barrage, and Lightning Arrow, I just think that for the level of the spell that you cast it, there are better options, you know. Conjure animals are pretty much 9 out of 10 times gonna deal more damage over a long period of time, if you're interested in damage. Plant growth and combining it with spike growth, which is a level 2 ranger spell as well, is gonna probably deal more damage as well. So that's just the thing that I'm considering, you know. Yeah, that's pretty much gonna be it. You always take these advices with a grain of salt, because this is a generic advice. This is something that I would be like, okay, what type of spell is gonna be the most useful in the broadest spectrum of situations and scenarios and circumstances that I find my character have to deal with, you know. So these would be the spells. And yeah, with that said, if you like this video, definitely leave a like on it. Let me know in the comments down below whether you think some of my advice doesn't hold water based on your own experience playing the game. I'm definitely open to learning more about it, because nobody knows everything, and if you have other experiences, definitely enlighten me on those. Again, subscribe to my channel. I am releasing videos more frequently lately. The challenge is still on. I'm probably gonna fail. There's not that much time left over, and I'm way too behind on making 50 videos in 50 days. But hey, as long as it's not November 11th, I'm still gonna keep trying. So yeah, subscribe for that. Turn on the notification button, to keep informed of all of my future videos. I do have a couple of build videos in the pipeline, so they are gonna be get released soon. A couple more highlights as well, so if you're interested in those, stick around. And yeah, once again, like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell button. You know the YouTube drill. Finally, once again, consider chucking a buck my way. It's not mandatory. I am gonna keep releasing everything for free. However, if you would be interested in supporting this channel in ways other than manipulating the YouTube algorithm by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing, once again, there is an option there. With that said, MinMax Munchking out, and see you and talk to you soon.